nama barri miite isa qobaa deemu kan qobaa gungumu kan qobaa gungumu waa'ee isaa dubbachuuf otoo himuu ka'ees dubbatameen dhumu dubbii dhiise mixii wal qabatte laga ceetu laale laale deeme waa'ee isaa wallaale laale laale deeme waa'ee isaa wallaale nama barri miite isa qobaa deemu kan qobaa gungumu kan qobaa gungumu waa'ee isaa dubbachuuf osoo himuu ka'ees dubbatameen dhumu dubbii dhiise mixii wal qabatte laga ceetu laale laale deeme waa'ee isaa wallaale laale laale deeme waa'ee isaa wallaale namaa bineensan qabu kuleen cillee dhalee booda kodhollee dhalaatti ilma abbaattiin humbaane keenya kuniyyuu falaayi akka ijaafa daamii halaalatti walleensaatti kaanis seenaa dagatee mana gumaa wal geessa.
We are here to discuss violence, but we don't want to perpetrate it on you. If you want to stand, stretch, that's okay. We have two people who need to put their memory sticks into the computer. We are the last panel of the day. Everyone's tired, and we were supposed to be over before we begin. But I do want to, I ask my panel to give, each of them to give one line for introduction of themselves. I could talk about many of them at length. I have done my work already by bringing these people to you. And I'm very proud that we have a good group of people. We are focused, we're looking at violence in the past and in the present. We have had, this theme has come up many times today. You all know that I have focused on the fact that the Ethiopian state was established by violence, and violence has been directed against the Oromo and others along the way. But this is not a panel about complaints, it's a panel of examining the reach by which the state continues to maintain control and the suffering that ensues, but also following the panel that came when the women's message was one of healing. We want to remember that the examination of violence is an examination of the real situation, of the realities that people live with, and of all the different levels in which this is perpetrated, but also that the forms of healing are many, and that the sources of joy and healing are within the culture, so that the people who are responding today focus on that as well. So with that in mind, we will begin with, I don't have the order of the program, but I think Gammachu Magarsa, who is the author of Knowledge, Identity, and the Colonizing Structure, is a man who's familiar with both the detailed history of the violence that the Oromo have confronted, but also the sources of the healing. So we are very happy to have him begin this discussion. Will be followed by Trevor, by Garoma, and by three others who I will introduce as they come forward. So Obogamachu, Obogamachu, will you come here?
And my theory is that the violence is crossing boundaries. Crossing boundaries against the wishes of the insiders, or contrary to the rules that legitimate such crossing. So by boundary, I am imagining a boundary between anything and everything. And in this case, I'm talking about cultural boundaries. So when a boundary is violated, that's violence. When your boundary is violated, it is violence. It doesn't matter whether this boundary is individual boundary or cultural boundary or whatever boundary, if the crossing is against the rules that legitimate such crossing, that's what I consider violence. So basically, by crossing boundaries against the will of the insiders and or contrary to the rules that legitimate crossing. And the Oromo boundary has been violated right from the beginning of the creation of Ethiopia, because many people misunderstand Ethiopia because we look at the map of Ethiopia the way it is drawn for us. But if you look at the map of Ethiopia, honestly, it overlaps with Oromia. If you go to Tigray, you would never find 3, 4 different shops running different music in different ethnic languages. It's just one ethnic language, one religion, and one culture that you would witness. If you go to Bahar Dar, almost every shop, you would never hear a Walaita song in the entire town, or you would never hear a Gurage song in any of the music shops or the bars or anywhere. It's all Amharic. It's only when you come to Oromia, go to even the smallest town in Oromia, as you move through the town, what you see is there is a Gurage song being played in one shop, the next shop is Walaita, the third shop may be Oromo, the fourth shop is Tigrinya, and the fifth shop is Adarinya, and this is modern Ethiopia. Modern Ethiopia is where different ethnic groups have come together and have created a country we call Ethiopia, and that Ethiopia is what overlaps with Oromia. So people rarely understand that Ethiopia doesn't really mean what it actually means when you look at the map. Because a good part of the map that you see to the north is a completely different culture from Oromia. What I am talking about is where different ethnic groups have come together, and this has to do with the creation of modern Ethiopia. And this modern Ethiopia is constituted or created by violating Oromo boundary, whether it is in the religious sense, religious boundaries have been violated, economic boundaries have been violated, religious, social boundaries, physical boundaries have been violated. Oromos have never been considered human beings. Their boundaries can be violated at will. And that's really what is perpetuating the kind of difference and controversies in that part of the Horn of Africa. I don't want to go into the definitions. I just want to give you anecdotes. Like I want to give you an example of economic violence, and I'm going to give you an anecdote from Borana. In 1932, the daughter of a certain Abba Kamau actually went to draw water from the river, and she died, and nobody knew why she died. Maybe it was a heart attack, but they couldn't, and there were no hospitals in those days to do post-mortem. So the government said that some Borana must have killed the daughter of Abba Kamau. And to find the killer, there was what they call a farsata or auchaching, and the Boranas were kept in the sun for 3 months, and the killer of the daughter of Abakama was not there because she didn't have any physical evidence that somebody killed her. So the government made an arbitrary decision, and the governor of Borana at that time was a certain Dejazmach Desta somebody. What he said is that the Borana will have to pay her blood. So the Borana paid 8,000 heifers. 8,000 heifers were paid. Rada kumasadet basan for the blood of Abakamau's daughter. This is really, it's a collective punishment. This is not just one example. It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. In Diredawa, in 1952, a certain Muhammad Abdi was accused to have fed on a human flesh. And the guy was crying, and he was telling them that he has never tasted human flesh. But they hanged him. These are just anecdotes and in Shawa, in Salale, most of you know the name Hagare Tullu. The day Hagare Tullu was arrested and brought to Salale, to Fiche, to be hanged, the government basically said that because Hagare has killed about 7 people, they said hanging of one gala is not sufficient to pay the blood of or the life of 7 Amharas, and therefore Hagare was hanged with his older brother, who was completely innocent and didn't know anything about what his younger brother did. This is a truly shameful history that we lived and we continue to live. And then I want to give you another anecdote from Dambidolo. In 1946, a certain Auraja Gaj, or district administrator by the name Dejazmach Shifarrao, because there was this protest by the local people, they were saying that they're going to measure land, and people protested and went into the bush with their guns to protest against the measuring of their land. And what the Jazmach Shifarrao told was, he convinced the people that the government is willing to discuss the issue with them, and people were brought together, and they were told to bring their ammunition, gun and ammunitions with them. So 650 of them came to the meeting, and they were told that the government is not going to discuss with armed people, so they had to pile up their arms in one place. As soon as they piled up their rifles, they were surrounded because there were armed people hiding there. So they surrounded them, and 650 of them were brought to Dambidolo jail. And now the government, after arresting them, didn't know what to do. They can't take them to court because these people have committed no crime. They can't leave them because if they leave them, they were scared that they will go back and go to the bush. So what the Jazmach Shifarrao did was, he went to the hospital, and they brought out from the hospital, they said that this guy who was suffering from typhus, and typhus is a contagious disease, tasibo. Nama tasibong kabe manahidati basani, fidani namad ibajaha giduti hidani, in 2 months, 650 people were decimated. Understand what Ethiopia is, you would never understand what violence is. Because Ethiopia is Oromia. They have an overlapping meaning. Ethiopia is where different ethnic groups have come together to form this modern Ethiopia. And all the different ethnic groups who have come to Oromia and settled there, they have worries about the Oromo. They all fear that one of these days these Gallas might rise up and throw them out. And this fear is deliberately perpetuated by successive governments. So everybody whom Oromo has accommodated and fear and live with has a fear for Oromo. They have made everyone to fear Oromo. Therefore, fear itself leads to violation, and that's how violence against the Oromo is perpetuated. And the few anecdotes that I have just given you are examples, but everyday life is violence against the Oromo. I can prove it if you give me the time. Everyday life is a violence against the Oromo. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Trevor Truman, who will be amply and fully introduced tomorrow as he is our second keynote speaker. So for the moment, I will introduce him as the chairman of the Oromia Support Group. He has done research in South Africa, and we will be the beneficiaries of his findings now. Trevor?
Nagel Tani. Thank you very much. You're a very patient and hard-working audience. Galatomi. I will start. I interviewed 60 refugees in and around Johannesburg and in Mpumalanga province in October and November last year. The report I've written on this is the biggest I've ever written, and it includes a lot of detail about the human rights abuses that were given to me by those refugees. This report is available online, and there's a possibility that some hard copies may be available tomorrow, depending on somebody coming from Minnesota with them. I want to tell you about one of the two women interviewees from the Ogaden. This is Ardo Mohammed. She's age 32. Her sister's first husband was shot dead on the road in the 1990s. Her sister's second husband was shot dead in his home in 2004. Her father and her 26-year-old brother were shot dead when watering their camels in 2005. In 2006, soldiers shot her mother dead in her kitchen, and then her 29-year-old sister-in-law when she came out of the house. They returned for Ardo's 34-year-old husband and took him away that evening when he disappeared. In 2007, they took her, leaving her own and her sister's children with her brother. 120 soldiers took her, a 14-year-old neighbor from her village called Rukia, a 14-year-old girl, and 13 men. They took them on a 12-day march to Godey city. Her hands were tied in front of her during the day and around a tree behind her during the night. They hit her with rifle butts and kicked her with heavy military boots when she'd fallen to the ground. She had blood in her urine which persisted for a year. Her left shoulder blade was broken and she still has scars from being stabbed in the neck. She was 4 months pregnant and miscarried during the trek. The 14-year-old girl, Rukia, was gang raped by different soldiers every night. Some nights this stopped at midnight, some nights this continued throughout the night. After 10 days, this 14-year-old girl was so badly injured from repeated rape that she could barely walk, so they strangled her to death. 2 of the men were also strangled to death on the 9th day. Oromo was held in a military camp in Godey. She was kept on her own for 17 months in a cell which was so small that she could not stand up or lie down. She could only sit. For much of the time, her hands were tied together. She escaped when her guard forgot to lock the cell door after the 1 daily toilet trip. She walked for 3 days until revived in a village where she met others walking to Somalia. She lived in Kismayo for a year before traveling to Kenya and eventually South Africa. I won't dwell on the other reported abuses except to say that these are catalogued in detail in the report and that the usual high prevalence of torture was found. These are the totals from the refugees I've interviewed in Kenya, Djibouti, Somaliland and South Africa. 71 overall, that's 46%. For anybody who studies refugees, the normal prevalence amongst refugee populations is between 5 and 35%. If you just look at the detainees, 102, 73% of them had been tortured. I'd like to report some of the difficult journeys that people had to South Africa, the violence in South Africa, including that targeting refugees, and the corruption in the asylum process. Travellers to South Africa were at risk of abuse, including rape by people smugglers. Several deaths were witnessed during dangerous and harsh journeys lasting up to 12 months, during which migrants were often short of food and water. Detention in unsanitary, severely overcrowded conditions, especially in Zambia, Tanzania and Malawi, for up to 5 months, was experienced by 18 interviewees in 21 episodes. Deportation and attempted deportation was reported by 4 during their journey. I'll summarize just 2 accounts. Abdul Qadir reported being stranded for 2 months in Tanzania, where he caught malaria. He was diverted to Dar es Salaam, where he caught a boat in 2005. He was forced out of the boat about 150 meters from the shore, and one of his fellow travelers drowned while trying to reach the shore. Abdul Qadir collapsed at the roadside because of his malaria. The police found him, and they prodded him and squeezed his nipples to make sure he was not pretending to be ill. He was taken to Kelimane Hospital, where he lay for 3 days without treatment. All of the other 12 people on the ward that he was in died. A stranger who was visiting another patient washed his clothes and warned him that he would be arrested as soon as he got better. She helped him escape and took him to a mosque. He spent the night outside the mosque, and the next day, which was a Friday, he begged for enough money to send him on a bus to Maputo. It's an 1,800 kilometer drive. Sorry, 2,800 kilometer drive. This is Fami. She was 19 when she traveled in a party of 98 from Nairobi, taking over 3 months to reach South Africa. They were all arrested in Tanzania. All 98 of them were held in a 10-meter by 10-meter room for 6 weeks before their agent paid for them to be released. One of their agents attempted to rape her on the journey. She described traveling at night for part of the journey hidden behind fish in a big truck. And at one stage she had to walk for 3 weeks on the trot. Many of the original 98 did not complete the journey. Some were left behind. At least 3 died. 2 young Kambatra or Hadia men drowned during a river crossing at the Zambian border, and another became exhausted and was killed by a lion. Violence in South Africa. This is a lady who also wanted to be known as Ardo. She's now 23 years old. She fled to South Africa in 2012 following abuses against herself and her father. And she was raped on her way to work at 7:30 on a Sunday morning in the middle of Johannesburg, about 4 days before I interviewed her. One of the 2 men who attacked her held her at gunpoint, while the other raped her, saying, "You Ethiopians and Somalis are safe," meaning that they didn't have AIDS. So you'll be attacked every time. She was robbed of her month's wages, and because of that she was unable to pay her rent. Because of that she was kicked out by her landlord. Now, it's difficult for immigrants to find work in South Africa. There is high unemployment, and hostility from local workers prevents them being employed in the mines and large industries like these petrochemical works in Mpumalanga. Most work in the retail sector, usually in small convenience stores, tuck shops or spaza shops, but this work is dangerous. This tuck shop in Alexandra was robbed by 5 men in April last year. The trader was beaten over the head with a rifle barrel, and a shot was fired near to his head. Notice the grill at the front of the shop through which customers are served. This is another Alexandra Township tuck shop. This one had been robbed 6 times. I was driven around Alexandra by somebody, and they said that place has been robbed twice. That was robbed 3 times last year. This one's been robbed 6 times, things like that. Halima came with her son, Saifuddin, in 2009. He was shot dead in a tuck shop robbery in Alexandra in June 2012. Zubair was one of 17 Oromo detained and threatened with return to Ethiopia in October 2008 after they had defended themselves against racist violence. When he was released, Zubair ran a tuck shop in Cape Town and defied robbers who came to his store in January 2011. He tried to pull a gun on them, but was shot 6 times, including through his spine, and now he's paralyzed in his legs and uses a disability scooter, as you see here, which was given by another paralyzed refugee. Thanks. This is Alexandra Township, where the widespread xenophobic violence of 2008 began. Media reported 62 deaths in 2 weeks, but this is an underestimate. Many, like the husband of Isha, just disappeared. Xenophobic attacks kills more than this in the average year in South Africa, although not in such a well-defined and short period. Tuck shops are also targets for organized xenophobic attacks. This is Bayan. He's abandoned 5 tuck shops after xenophobic threats and attacks. He's shown here in a blood-soaked vest after an attack on his shop in Delmas in February 2011. The flyer from Greater Gauteng Business Forum was delivered to his next shop in Randfontein in April 2011. It warns of drastic measures being taken against him if he doesn't pack up and leave within 7 days. This and the next slide are 2 sides of a leaflet which was delivered to business people in the Mayfair district of Johannesburg in July 2012. One side accuses foreigners of being terrorists, and the other side is pure racist abuse and threats. You see at the top, you dogs, pigs, bastards. Please read this nicely, because it may be the last time for you to read. Asylum is basically for sale in South Africa. The process is rotten to the core with corruption. Abdul Karim went twice a week for 5 months to Home Affairs, paying no bribes except 200 rands to get in. Nobody asked me my problem, nothing, he said. His claim was rejected. Zabiba arrived in 2003, but is still without refugee status, having only paid 500 rands for 4 6-month extensions to her asylum seeker permit. The going rate for a refugee status is now between 4,500 and 5,000 rands, somewhat over $500. Ahmed paid nothing to register in 2002, but he's still without refugee status. He pays between 500 and 600 rands for 1 to 6 month extensions to his asylum seeker permit. In 2008, he was offered refugee status if he paid 2,000 rand, but he refused to pay. Officials tell refugees not to pay bribes, but this carries a high price: illegality and the threat of deportation. Hafiz has refugee status, and he was asked for payment for an extension to his refugee paper in 2010. The refugee officer said, "How much are you going to pay me?" And Hafiz said, "I'm just going to give you 50 rand." And the officer then just tore up his 4-year extension and told him to come back in 4 days, and now he gets 6 months extensions. Now, I painted a bleak picture of the country, which perhaps reflects my disappointment in the ANC, but it's the reality on the ground. South Africa's vibrant civil society is the country's greatest asset and its greatest hope for a democratic, fair and uncorrupt future. The Coalition for Refugees and Migrants in South Africa, COMSA, and Lawyers for Human Rights are superb organizations, and I urge Oromo refugees to support them, as well as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch over there. There is every prospect that civil society will reverse the slide into violence and corruption in South Africa. Thank you.
Nama barri mite isa qoba demu kan qoba gungumu wae sa dubbachu oto himu ka es dubbatamen numu dubbi dise miti wal qabatte laga ceetu lale deme wae sa wallale lale deme wae sa wallale. Nama barri mite isa qoba demu kan qoba gungumu wae sa dubbachu oto himu ka es dubbatamen numu dubbi dise miti wal qabatte laga ceetu lale deme wae sa wallale lale deme wae sa wallale. Nama bineensan qabu kuleen cillee dhalee booda kodhollee dhala tilma baattiin humbaane keenya kuniyyuu falaayi. akka ijaafa daamii halaalatti walleessatti kaan seenaa dagatee mana gumaa walgeessatti mana gumaataa malee mana gumaataa malee mana gumaa nun geessine.
Galatoma nu eeguu keessaniifi I really appreciate for your patience because we are too late. So I want to just do my presentation as fast as possible. So today I'm going to present about the human rights violation in Ethiopia, especially after the days of Prime Minister Mallas Zenawi, and that means during the new PM, what is really improved after that and what is not improved, or the violation continued or not. This is what I'm going to see. So in general, what we can see is in 2012, especially the second half of 2012, we saw two different things. So the two things that happened at the same time. The first one is the days of the Prime Minister, Mallas Zenawi, that is in August. And the second one is in November, Ethiopia was elected as a member of Human Rights Council. So regarding the human rights, we are going to see what happened. So when Mallas was died, everybody, Ethiopians and the supporters of Ethiopians, expected that there will be some changes in regarding human rights violations, because the human rights violation was very high in the past 21 years. So it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Nothing was just changed. It continued. At the same time, Ethiopia was elected as a member of Human Rights Council to fill the 47 seats in the United Nations. That means Ethiopia can really promote and protect human rights globally, not only in Ethiopia. So it didn't happen. So even after that, after Ethiopia was elected as a Human Rights Council with a big responsibility, the human rights abuse was intensified in Ethiopia. So what I want to see is now, you can see from here, just please start from number one up to the last. Yes, you can read for yourself. So what I want to see is after Mallas was died, what happened? Many students, especially, let's start from the latest to the last. So in January, Mallas was died in August 2012. After 1 month in January, Ethiopian Oromo students in Addis Ababa University were harassed because they demand some questions about human rights violation in the university, and they were insulted. So they present their demand. Because they present their demand, they were arrested. 135 students were arrested. So after 2 months, around 100 students were released, and the other 35 students still today, nobody knows where they are. Again, from the released students, upon just they arrived at the Sabah University, that means they came to the university, 10 were fired. That means they are suspended from school. You can see from there. So this is the first one. The second one is just starting from there. When you see about land grab, actually about land grab or about just evicting the people, I will see tomorrow detailedly. Just I have got a program. I want to pass about that. So what I want to mention about just the recent day. Okay. Okay, thank you. So just let me go fast. So I want to jump about land transfer. Tomorrow I'll show you this again, so I have to pass fast. So then about in relation with land grab, after Mallas died, let's go to the Oromo Valley, that means the southern Ethiopia. These people were forced to evict, and who resisted were they are just killed. 147 people were killed at one time in the Suri tribe in the southern part of Ethiopia. So this one again I will see tomorrow. so I have to pass it. So these are the students which I told about. So the right of religion, people who are just protesting about the religion, that means interference of the religion, were just in prison, and they are charged with the treason. The treason that you know that 2009 Ethiopia has got a anti-terrorist law or proclamation. So these people are simply asking demand their religion right. So they are now as a terrorist. They are in prison. So what I want to focus here is we, Human Rights League of the Horn of Africa, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and Dr. Truman, this organization, we are reporting about violence and about imprisonment again and again. What I want to focus on today is we have to go far ahead, one step forward, because what I'm presenting here is now not only on OSA organization. I started from last year, present on international level at United Nations, and we have to go further. That's what I'm going to see now. I'm going to see the responsibility of the government, especially by violating the human rights in their country. Governments have got a responsibility for what they are doing in international level. So I'm going to see about the responsibility of the international. If you see international law, we have got international law at one level, and if you see in the detail about international law, it has got two components, main components, the customary law and the treaty laws. So these two laws formed or made the international law. So Ethiopia is signed a lot of especially treaty laws. When you are talking about treaty law, that is human rights laws, human rights treaties, different human rights treaties. A country which just signed a human rights treaty, it should respect, the country should respect what they sign. If not, they are considered as they violated internationally or international law, so they will be asked or they are responsible for what they did. So for that, just let us see how many treaties Ethiopia signed. Look, I'm talking when I'm going about treaties. I'm talking about different conventions and covenants. So I'm starting from the recent to the oldest. For example, the first one is, if you see the first, this was signed in 1991. So in 1991, Ethiopia signed a convention against torture, while still today, every day, every minute, every second, Ethiopia is torturing the citizens. This is unlawful. This is really violating international law. I told you that international law composes the treaty law and the customary law. So they should obey the international law or what they signed. And the second one is just international covenant on civil and political rights. So in general, we have got 9 treaties in human rights. From 9, if you add their others, like we have got 16 or 17. So with their protocols, each treaty has got a protocol. So among these 9 treaties, main treaties, Ethiopia signed 7 of them, while Ethiopia didn't respect even one treaty, the first treaty or the second, or just from 7, even 1. So Ethiopia is accountable for what they are what it is doing. The government is just accountable or responsible. So the scope of the obligation is very far. So when we are it is very wide. We can book a charge against Ethiopia, or we can file a case in our international court of just ICC, you know, that International Criminal Court. And again, we have got in regional level the African Court, Peoples and Human Rights Court. We can file there. So to file this, we have to have a solid document. We are documenting every time. We are just reporting. It's not enough. So we have got a solid document. We can file. Who has got a right to file such type of just cases? For example, if we take ICC has got 122 members. Actually, this is international court. The international court is funded by United Nations, even though ICC is not a part of United Nations, it is funded. So all 193 countries under United Nations should sign or should be a member of ICC, while most of them just denied. They don't want to be the member of the ICC because they don't know the consequence. Ethiopia is one of these countries. Ethiopia is not the member of ICC. Even though Ethiopia is not the member of ICC, we have a right to charge against Ethiopia with ICC, depending on our files or depending on our documents. So there are 3 legal bodies who can file the case with ICC and with African peoples and human rights courts. The first one is, for example, if we talk about ICC, the first one is the member country can file. Ethiopia is not a member, and we are not a member. Of course, we are human rights organization. And the second one who can file is the United Nations, United Security Council. For example, the Sudan government is charged, or just he has got a file at ICC. Who files that case? The United Nations United Nations Security Council, they filed. And the third one is the prosecutor of ICC can file. The prosecutor of ICC can file the case only if they got a solid document from us. Human Rights League of the Horn of Africa is a member of United Nations now. Many of you know that. We have got a status. So using that status, we can present what I'm presenting here at United Nations, and we can discuss with ICC members, not member states even, and there's a prosecutor, and we can file a case through them. So to do that, what should we do? We have to really make a detailed research. Our file should be full of documents which they need. Then after they investigate what we just sent to them, they can file a case against Ethiopia. This is what Human Rights League of the Horn of Africa is going to do next. So I'm discussing with Dr. Trevor about this document, and after we fulfill the document, we will send to the ICC or the African Peoples and Human Rights Court to file a case. So if our case is, if what we file or what we send our document is full of evidence, the Ethiopian government should be just asked, it will be asked, and it will be charged for this. So what is the consequence? The consequence is the Ethiopian, for example, if you have got, I told you 122 countries are the member of ICC. If they see Ethiopia is at the court of ICC with allegation or if with the case of human rights violation, they have got a legitimate to put pressure on Ethiopia. So this is our step. So I want to invite you, those especially who are lawyers, to see in this angle and discuss with us about what we are going to present, because in legal wise, before we send to ICC prosecutor, our document should be really relevant. Should be relevant. Otherwise, once we send, and if it fails there, that means it doesn't get an acceptance, it is very tough to send again. So thank you for listening. And about land grab and the others, I'll be tomorrow or here in the present. Thank you for listening.
We know that it's extremely frustrating to bring this caliber of people with this kind of data and have them speak only 15 minutes. However, now you know that they have done this work. You know the kind of thing that's available. There's a website, there's publication, and there's activism on the part of all the people. Gamachu's work is to be published on violence specifically. So use this as an opportunity to follow up, because this is the best we can do, is present what's here, and within the time constraints that we've set for ourselves, at least you have a sampling, and you can follow up if you put the effort into that. Our next group is 3 torture survivors who have agreed to share a 15-minute time slot. So let me introduce them. Now you can be aware of the fact that they are working and testifying and forming alliances with people who are concerned about human rights and about torture. So the first speaker is Fayera Nagara, an Oromo torture survivor and human rights activist, and I'll let him take it from there.
Akkam ooltan. Maqaan koo Fayyeraa Nagaraati. Egaa namoonni baay'een waan keessa dabarre waan irra deebinee isinitti himnu isinitti fakkaata, garuu akkas miti, akkas hin goonu. Waan waliin diina keenya goone, waan aadaan keenya diina keenya irratti gochaa jiru isinitti himna. Waan keessa dabarre yookaan waan diinni nu godhe duwwaa hin dubbannu, carraa kana nu kennuu keessaniif galatoomaa jenna. I'm going to discuss the pattern of violence against the Oromo people. My birthplace is in Odabisi region at Bokku Tukur. The place of Gada assembly and the Butta ceremony is Lafto Samalo. I have seen the Gada assembly and the Butta ceremony when I was in elementary school. The Gada system was banned by the Derg regime. I am the custodian of Kallacha Warrakune, a father of Gada Kune. Kallacha is a symbol of righteousness, a gift from Waka, God. You have to refrain from wrongdoing, stick to what is right. Background, I also take responsibility for my actions. The big secret behind our gathering here today is the strength of our culture, beliefs, and the traditions for survival. My story is part and a parcel of the story of typical Oromo nationalists who have seen the Ethiopian empire with an eagle's eye. Descendants of 2 great warriors, Gadakune and a single mother of 3 strong men. Gadakune was a famous warrior and a great horseman. Killing a human being is chubu, or sin in Oromo culture. And he didn't want to kill the amateur young horsemen. He killed their horses, 99 over a course of many years. He paid 1 gasha or 1 ta as a compensation. The story of a single mother of 3 strong men to get access to land and water is a popular story in Jibat and Macha, Eastern Macha Oromos. Guddatakalo was displaced by the 3 brothers, but Gadakune fought back and remained in his birthplace. The spear of Gadakune also resisted AK-47 or Kalashnikovs of the Soviet Union, and the Guta Ragasa resisted Kabali army militias. An elder in our clan refused to join the Derg military and survived. This is a real story. how I got involved in the struggle. That is before birth. I totally agree with Jawar. My mother was 13 when she was married to my father. You can imagine the impact of child marriage and arranged marriage. Her impact of Oduduri, fireside or bedtime stories of conflict over land and water before and after the conquest of Oromia. The word Roro and the story of Motumma, Ya Motumma song was my mother's favorite story, and I was delighted to give back to Urji Daba, an Oromo torture survivor. It is the greatest gift I have ever given to a woman, a memory retention from my mother. I felt that I have given meaning to my life, the greatest meaning of survival, a story of hardship, resilience, perseverance, and human interaction, an amazing connection to a torture survivor, Catholic nun, Sister Diana Ortiz. I have also seen conflict resolution in the Oromo of my area. The displaced and humiliated Gada Kalo waited for a favorable time. During the Italian invasion, he got firearms and confiscated their cattle, made the Gondolwako descendants prisoners of war. Therefore, land grabbers, watch out. We know our boundaries, we know our lands. We will get you. Believe it or not, we will get you. There is also idda jarri biyya keenya qabatanii Oromummaan Orofuffaa taate. Orofitti, I'm not a linguist. I think Orofuffaa means the way we are today. Oromummaa became despised. Therefore, we are reclaiming Oromummaa. It's Oromummaa that has connected us together. Thank you for giving me the chance.
Hayyee akkam jirtan nagaa fayyaadha. Hayyee daqiiqaan nu kanname hedduu xiqqaadha. Waa hedduu dubbachuudhaaf yeroon hin jirtu. So thank you for the chance. I will try to show you only not to talk because there is no time. Only I have 5 minutes. Odoon hin hidhamin akkam ture seenaa kiyya keessatti maal nama oloo gadoo ceehee bahuu ture arihee qabuu tureen ture har'an taane sanii kun san ibsa akkaan bakkaan itti dhaladhe ibsa kunis irrumaan utaala maal akkaan ture odoon hin hidhamin kan ibsu kanaas irrumaan utaala kunis ibsuu waan mootummaan kun goote kan jiru so kanaas irrumaan utaala bakkaan itti hidhame faa kan ibsu kana keessaa takka qofti yoon tuqe private house kan jiru it is in one hotel. I was arrested. I was detained. So to explain everything there is no time, but I have to jump. some of the myths and the types of torture I was subjected, only to show some of them. Maybe physically, if somebody is hurted, it will be recover. But mentally, psychologically hurted, it takes a long time according to the psychologist. Some record is about my torture. Only I will emphasize on, I was visited by Sudan, Supolok. In 1996, the Oromo Community Organization in Washington, D.C., USA wrote an appeal letter to President Bill Clinton. And about that, I will come at the end, according to the press release of the OCG in 1996. So Sudan was come to Addis Ababa or Finfinne, and I met her. She interviewed me, and after that, she put on the OCG press release number 10, 1996, Eastern Oromia, Ethiopia, imprisonment, intimidation, and the torture. A young Oromo man who did not wish to be named stated in tepid Irmanu talaga hundau yeroon hin jirtu. Kana hima akkaataa itti tumaminsa kiyyaa kan himu kanumaan olitti ibsee asirra jira. Akka jetti kunoo isin kana laaluu dandeessani. Nama wallaansaas ogummaa wallaansaa qabu isin na laaltee waan jette. Killing namoota du'an bakkaan hursoo waliin turetti warreen du'an Fuad first name Barentoo Oromoo jedhama maqaan isaa tokko. So sababni inni du'eefis kanuma biyya isii irratti dhuftee jimaa gurgurtii jimaan ka isiitii biitinis ta isiitii maaliif tumtanii je kanumaatu isaa kophaa baasisee ajjeesisee jechuudha. Namoonni biraatis according to the source of following anumaatu itti hime kanaas namoota biraa ka torba bakka takkatti ajjeesanii jira. Namoonni kun irra hedduun isaanii gariin manguddoo gariin ammoo warra harka caccabsanii ceehullee hin dandeenye kadeemullee hin dandeenye markab gobeellee namni jedhamu faan nama sosoo hin dandeenye garuu ni badanii jedhanii hoggaan UNHCR siyaaritti himu. Kanuma bakkaan itti ragaa bahee Jenevaa fa'aa as koongiraasaa fi bakka adda addaatti kan ibsu kuni. Wanta kana himulleen nama dhukkubsa xiqqoo haa ta'u haala ammaan tana jiru hoo maali isiin tun hin dhaabbanne itti fufaa jirti kan jiru agarsiisa kuni. Haala ammaan tana jiru naannoo baha Oromiyaadhaatitti barattoota hidhuu ajjeesuu barmoota irraa baasuu dachii buqqaasuu kana qaba. Kuni kana Amnesty International waa'ee torcharii irratti kan riipoortii bara kanaa baafte faadha qaba. Kanuma kana caalaa dubbachuu hin danda'u garuu wanni inni jechuuf hiriiree tana fayyadame yeroo hunda deemnee hulaa faranjii dura dhaabbannee boonyee iyyinee boohuu sanuu ittiin beeynu himachuu sanuu ittiin beeynu garuu kan qofti hin gahaa miti qabsoo goonee qabsoodhaan keessaa ba'uu qabnaan jaa qabsoo haafiniin sinuu fayyaa ta'a.
Nagaa ooltanii maqaan koo Abbabee Ittaanaa Cawaaqaan jedhama. Torcha survivor umurii kanatti illee survivor jechuun xinnoon ulfaata. Wantan asirratti haasoo barbaade xinnoo we tried to share before our presentation. We tried to share among three of us what we are going to present, and my share was to present the probable solutions for the Oromo struggle success and achievement. Therefore, let me brief about my experiences in different detention centers. I was an employee of Ethiopian Airlines, and I was a senior training officer, senior HR specialist in human rights division of the company. When I was detained, I was to begin my MBA degree. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that, and I tried for about 5 years, but they didn't allow me. My brief account was written by the young intellectual Kulani Jallata. She wrote about our history some years, 2 years ago. And I am not mainly focusing on myself. But what I want to put here is that the first problem I faced was the nationalism feeling I had, and my involvement in the FDG, Finchlaya Didda Gabrumma, was the main reason that they mentioned when they detained me from the Bole airport. And they tortured me in front of employees because I questioned. When the security came, they were playing close and asked them for a warrant. And then they said that I don't have the right to ask them. And I challenged them for about 2 hours to move from my office. And that information went up to the CEO, Mr. Gurmawake, and finally, after about 2.5 hours, they took me, and before they reached their hidden car, they hide their car behind the parking lot. They beat me there with a pistol. They broke my teeth, and then they took me to my Klawi. Everything happened there. I passed that. And then I tried to escape. I couldn't. I had a visa to the United Kingdom. I couldn't escape due to the interwoven structure of the TPLF security structure. They again just captured me, put me into Kaliti. My experiences both in Kaliti and Maklawi is more what I want to, there are some points I want to focus is about the difference of treatment between the Oromo political prisoners and the Abasha prisoners. Dr. Gamachu mentioned something about the difference of culture and what is going on in Amhara region and the Oromo region. And this exactly happens in detention centers. The way we have been treated, the way I was treated is quite different from the way CUD officials have been treated. I remember Dr. Brhano was invited here. I was a newcomer in 2009 here. And he was telling me about my history here, being invited by my brothers here, my seniors. He was telling me the problem he didn't go through. When we have been crying the whole night in my Kalawi, the whole night yelling, akka sa'a akka horii qalamee mar'ataa bullu. They were probably in small cells, because they are treated well, better than us, because we were, and we are no citizens. We are in a colony, as he said, but he didn't pass through that as we did. And in Kaliti too, I was sick, And they denied me treatment because I was not, I said that I'm a political prisoner, and the commander, Tigrayan commander said that we don't have any political prisoner here. Then after some time, about 5 months, I was released, and then the third time I was detained in 2009. And they put me this time into another hidden detention center. They tried even to kill me. Saying so much about myself, I have some message from, sorry, Ms. Bonnie, some message that I want to focus on the probable solutions that my, elder brothers may better give attention. Wanti mana hidhaa keessa immoo jirru more utuu beektota keenya irratti focus godhanii jennee sammuu keenya keessa naanna'u amma structure ta'een dhiyaanne asirratti wantuma eventii tokko ture gidduu kana wantuma kaleessa argitan isarratti I was focusing on that. Garuu wanti akka hidhamaa tokkotti tu sirratti hojjettanii jedhee focus gochuu barbaadu waa'ee hawaasa keenya, ummata keenya, passive society. I'm not criticizing my people. Akka Dr. Gammachuun amma yeroo dhiyoo ibsaa jiran akka intaaneteera hawaasa. Oromummaadha baheera. Garuu kanaan this should not be an excuse. We should not keep quiet. Kanaan dura himataan deemu. There were around 300 CUD prisoners in Kaliti. More than 5,000 Oromo prisoners. Kan dhufee nu gaafatu. The opposite of that. Isaaniin kuma shantu dhufee gaafatu.